Hello, dear uncles, aunts, and respected seniors. Thank you for returning to this familiar little home, where each video I make is like a small gift sent to those who have reached the age of 60 and wish to continue living healthily, happily, and meaningfully each day. Here, we do not talk about perfection, we talk about small steps, about gentle understanding for our own bodies, and about habits that can rekindle our belief in a loving and fulfilling older age. Have you ever asked yourself, is intimacy between husband and wife still important after turning 60? Or perhaps you have sighed and thought, I am old now, that part of life is no longer necessary. But what if I told you that giving up your sex life after 60 is not just accepting old age, but in some cases, it also means giving up an important part of your health? How would you feel about that? Today, I want to share with you a new perspective, not to stir up regret, but to awaken something that was once beautiful and deeply human inside each of us. Based on real-life experiences and scientific studies from reputable organizations such as the United States National Institutes of Health, we will explore 4 silent consequences that may come from letting intimacy disappear, and the reasons why it is never too late to begin again. If you have ever believed that intimacy is only for the young, then today's video might surprise you. Please stay until the end, because I believe what I share at the very end may touch a quiet place deep in your heart. And who knows, perhaps from that place, something truly beautiful can begin once again. 1. The brain ages faster without intimacy. I still remember one afternoon a few years ago, in a quiet clinic during the autumn season. Mr. George walked in. He was a retired math teacher, 72 years old, polite and serious, with the seasoned gaze of someone who had spent more than 40 years in the classroom. He told me that recently he had been forgetting the names of his former students, and sometimes he would be in the middle of doing something and suddenly forget what he was supposed to do next. Doctor, I am not as sharp as I used to be. It feels like my mind is getting foggier every day. I began checking his memory, his reflexes, and asked about his medical history and medications. Everything was normal. There were no signs of dementia or any visible physical damage. It was not until I asked about his personal life that Mr. George fell silent for a moment, then softly said, "Since my wife passed away, I have not had any intimacy. It has been almost 5 years now." That answer did not surprise me. In over 30 years of being a doctor, I have encountered hundreds of similar cases. And what many people do not realize is that when intimacy disappears, our brain is truly affected. Recent studies, especially from the Neuroscience Research Institute at Harvard University, show that sexual activity helps increase blood flow to areas of the brain related to memory, emotions, and learning ability. More than that, moments of closeness stimulate the brain to release valuable chemicals such as dopamine, which helps with focus, oxytocin, which promotes bonding, and endorphins, which reduce pain and bring comfort. To put it simply, every loving touch, every warm hug, every tender look is a magical medicine that nourishes the brain. This is especially true for older adults. When social activities have lessened and children have grown up, emotional closeness becomes more precious than ever. On the other hand, when intimacy is lacking, the brain becomes less stimulated, lacks emotional connection, and gradually sinks into a quiet and sorrowful state. Elderly people may begin to feel forgotten, unnoticed, leading to a loss of interest in life, memory decline, slower reaction times, and a lack of motivation. Many older adults mistakenly believe that confusion, forgetfulness, or emotional fatigue are simply normal signs of aging, but in reality, these may be the result of prolonged emotional isolation when one no longer has anyone to hold hands with, or to share the simple human feelings of connection. The important point is that this does not necessarily come from sexual intercourse in the narrow sense. A hug, a whisper, a gentle touch is already enough to make a big difference. The brain does not demand grand gestures. It simply needs to feel loved, to feel bonded, and to feel meaningful to someone. Back to the story of Mr. George. After a few conversations, I suggested that he join a local community club where seniors could share, make friends, and enjoy light exercise together. He hesitated at first, but then agreed. A few months later, he returned with a bright smile and said, "Doctor, I have started remembering the names of my former students, and I have a new friend." I did not ask any further. I just smiled, because I knew that new connections were forming. And Mr. George's brain was once again being nourished by the gentle light of emotional closeness. So if you find yourself forgetting more often or becoming less mentally sharp, do not just blame it on age. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone touched me with tenderness? Perhaps that is the missing piece in your overall health picture. 2. The body loses strength due to the absence of a quiet source of energy. During a routine health consultation, I saw Mr. Carl and Mrs. Linda again. Both were in their late 60s. They had been married for nearly 40 years and had 3 grown children living far away. On the surface, they were still a harmonious and caring couple, but in Mrs. Linda's eyes, there was a trace of sadness. After a few casual questions, she looked at me and softly said, "We think that part of life is over." "Doctor?" Mr. Carl gently nodded. He did not say much, but I noticed an unmistakable weariness in his face. Mrs. Linda shared that recently her husband often felt tired. He no longer enjoyed going out or tending to the garden as he used to. He had gained weight, his muscles were sagging, and his sleep was poor. As for her, she often experienced joint pain and restlessness without any clear reason. Both of them believed these were simply normal signs of aging, but I knew that behind the silence in their intimate life was a whole chain of biological changes quietly unfolding. The truth is, when intimacy is interrupted for a long time, the body is significantly affected. Sex is not just a physical act, it is a series of physiological and emotional responses, involving blood circulation, the nervous system, hormones, and even the immune system, all working actively together. Each time there is emotional stimulation, the brain sends signals to the endocrine glands. In men, the pituitary gland and testes coordinate to produce testosterone, a hormone that maintains energy, muscle strength, and mental sharpness. In women, the ovaries and adrenal glands release estrogen and oxytocin, substances that help balance mood, protect joints and bones, and foster feelings of connection and peace. When sexual or intimate activity disappears, these glands gradually become less active. In men, testosterone levels begin to drop sharply. The result is fatigue, irritability, belly fat, loss of desire, sleep disturbances, and muscle weakening, which reduces flexibility and increases the risk of falling. In women, a drop in estrogen can lead to osteoporosis, dryness, joint pain, reduced immunity, and a higher risk of depression. Aside from hormones, another crucial factor is blood circulation. When 2 people share physical intimacy, even just hugging, a gentle kiss, or a caress, the heart rate increases slightly, blood vessels expand, and blood flows more efficiently. This is a mild form of exercise with benefits similar to brisk walking or deep breathing. Good blood flow keeps the heart strong, supplies the brain with enough oxygen, gives the skin a healthy glow, and helps all organs function more effectively. On the other hand, when intimacy disappears, circulation slows. Small blood vessels gradually lose their elasticity. The heart has to work harder to pump blood throughout the body. Muscle tissues receive less oxygen, leading to fatigue, headaches, dizziness, and a loss of vitality. Older adults may feel they are aging faster, without realizing that the loss of physical connection is a key part of the problem. I recall a study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, which reported that men over the age of 60 who engaged in regular sexual activity had nearly 30% higher testosterone levels compared to those who no longer had regular relations. In women, studies from Tufts University also found that emotional closeness and frequent physical contact significantly reduced the risk of osteoporosis and immune system decline. Some may ask, what if I am no longer able to have intercourse? Does that mean there is no way to improve? The answer is, full intercourse is not necessary to gain the benefits. Simple actions such as hugging your partner, holding hands, massaging shoulders and neck, or even whispering words of love can reactivate physiological responses that have been dormant. Though the elderly body may no longer be as vibrant as in youth, it still retains its capacity to feel. In fact, after the age of 60, the body needs to be cared for with even more gentleness and closeness. Touch does not only warm the skin, it is also the language of love. And love, even when it comes late, can still bring remarkable strength. For Mr. Carl and Mrs. Linda, I suggested starting with the simplest thing. Each morning upon waking up, hold each other's hands for 10 seconds, look into each other's eyes, and wish one another a peaceful day. Then give a hand or shoulder massage and share some old memories. 2 months later, Mrs. Linda called me. Her voice was soft but filled with joy. "Doctor, he has started gardening again." And each evening, we touch each other just like we used to. 3. When silence in a relationship becomes the deepest crack. I once met a woman named Mrs. Margaret, 74 years old, with a gentle face and sad eyes. as if carrying an entire sky of memories. Her husband had just recovered from a long cancer treatment. They had walked through life together for half a century, overcoming countless challenges. But there was one thing she still could not get used to: the silence in her own home. During a routine checkup, she shared a sentence with me that I will never forget. "I do not want him to feel pressured. But honestly, I miss the feeling of someone touching me." She sat there, hands clasped, her voice trembling slightly. "I do not want to be just a caregiver, I still want to be a wife." That sentence reflected something many people her age experience but cannot bring themselves to say. After illness, after hardship, after years of carrying family responsibilities, many couples begin living more like roommates than lovers. No arguments, no raised voices, but also no more touching, no more spontaneous hugs, no more tender whispers before bedtime. Just a long silence. When intimacy disappears, many people assume it is due to age, health, or circumstances. But the more worrying truth is the silent fracture growing within the relationship. When we stop touching each other, we also stop truly looking at each other, stop listening deeply, and stop asking the little things that once made our hearts flutter. The wife may think her husband no longer finds her attractive. The husband may believe his wife is tired and uninterested. But no one says anything. No one asks. And so the distance grows, without anyone truly knowing who stepped back first. Often, we do not realize what we are losing until that silence becomes too familiar. There are wives who take meticulous care of their husbands, from every meal to every pill, yet turn away quietly at night. There are husbands who worry over every ache and pain their wives have, but no longer remember the last time they looked at her as a woman. This kind of distance is not just emotional. It affects self-esteem, self-worth, and mental health. When someone no longer feels desired or valued, they slowly retreat inward. They no longer want to dress nicely, no longer want to look in the mirror, and no longer feel important in the eyes of their partner. Over time, they become a shadow in their own home. For those who live alone, widowed or divorced, the feeling can be even sharper. Many begin to convince themselves that they no longer need closeness, that such things are no longer appropriate at their age. But the truth is, the human body and soul never stop longing for connection. No matter our age or situation, we all want to be loved, to be touched by eyes and hands filled with emotion. I once had a female patient in her 70s who had lived alone for more than 10 years. She told me, "Doctor, I have forgotten what it feels like to be called darling. I have forgotten what it feels like to be awaited by someone each evening." That sentence broke my heart, because behind the calm faces are hearts still yearning to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be loved. The danger is that this loneliness often does not show on the outside. That person may live in a house full of family, still chat with children and grandchildren, still join community events, but deep inside they feel like an outsider, like someone who has already passed their time. And when loneliness lasts too long, it leads to serious health effects: depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, weakened immunity, and even heart disease. That is why scientists call loneliness the silent killer of the elderly. For Mrs. Margaret, I suggested that she and her husband join a meditation and couple communication class organized by the Senior Association. A seemingly simple activity, but one that opened the door for them to look at each other again, to say the things they had never said, and to reconnect through their very first gaze. A month later, she came to see me, her face visibly brighter. We have started sleeping in the same bed again, not to do anything much, just to be closer. And that is enough, because closeness does not always require physical intimacy, but it always requires sincerity and the courage to begin again. 4. You may be living less because of lost connection. I once cared for an elderly gentleman named Robert, 81 years old. He lived a simple life in the suburbs, had no complex medications, no serious underlying conditions, and always maintained a youthful spirit that was rare for his age. Every time he came in for a checkup, he brought with him a wide smile and bright eyes. But what surprised me most was not his stable blood pressure or strong heart. It was the vitality that radiated from within him. When I asked about his secret, he smiled and said, "Every morning I tease my wife a little. In the afternoon, we water the flowers together. At night, if my back is not too sore, we fall asleep in each other's arms. Sometimes, we are still intimate. Not often. Gently, but sincerely." That answer reminded me of a number of important scientific studies. One in particular, published in the British Medical Journal, showed that older adults who maintain a regular sex life have a significantly lower risk of death than those who no longer have sexual activity. But it is not only about physical intimacy. The study also emphasized other forms of connection such as hugging, kissing, gentle touch, and loving conversation. When people maintain emotional and physical closeness, the body releases a series of beneficial chemicals like oxytocin, endorphins, and serotonin. These help to lower blood pressure, reduce inflammation in the body, boost the immune system, stabilize heart rate, improve sleep quality, reduce stress and anxiety. On the other hand, if emotional and physical connection is absent for a long time, the nervous system automatically activates a prolonged stress state. The body produces more cortisol, a hormone related to the fight or flight response that should only be triggered during danger. When cortisol levels remain high over time, it leads to increased blood pressure, disrupted sleep, unstable blood sugar, and a weakened immune system. The concerning part is that many seniors have become used to living in this state without realizing it. They think poor sleep is because of aging. They believe fatigue is due to the weather. They accept forgetfulness, lack of focus, or loss of motivation as inevitable signs of getting old. But in many cases, it is not the aging body at fault. It is the heart missing something vital connection. I remember during a conference at the National Institute on Aging, a doctor shared a quote that deeply resonated with me. Humans are not designed to live without touch. Physical closeness is not just a basic need, it is a survival need, like sunlight to plants. The human body needs to be hugged, touched, and loved in order to continue growing and fighting aging. A survey conducted at the University of Michigan with more than 3,000 seniors showed that those with a healthy, intimate life lived on average 4 to 7 years longer than those with little or no intimacy. They also had significantly lower rates of heart disease, high blood pressure, and depression. Yet society often makes the elderly feel ashamed when talking about their desire for closeness. Many seniors think that wanting to hug someone, hold hands, or even be intimate is inappropriate. This belief leads them to give up a deeply beautiful and human part of themselves. And over time, that surrender contributes to shortening their life, not just in years, but in the quality of each day lived. I have witnessed many older people who, upon reconnecting through small acts like holding hands, having intimate conversations, or learning to express emotion, experienced clear physical improvements. They ate better, slept deeper, walked faster, and even appeared visibly younger. It is not magic. It is the power of emotion and true connection. Mr. Robert is a perfect example. He does not jog every morning. He does not take expensive supplements. But he always has his wife beside him, always has a reason to smile, always has someone waiting for him every night. And in medicine, that is called a strong life force, a factor no drug can ever replace. If you have read this far and suddenly realize you have been living a little too lonely, remember that it is never too late. Just one small step. Sending a message to an old friend, reaching out to hold your spouse's hand while watching TV, smiling at someone in the morning, can awaken long-sleeping sources of energy in your heart and your blood. Lifespan is not just measured in years. It is measured in each day you feel connected, loved, and truly alive. 5. It is never too late to begin again. I once met a woman named Eleanor. She was 78 years old, petite, with silver hair neatly tied behind her neck and eyes that were both strong and tired. She came to see me during a psychological counseling session for older adults. After taking her granddaughter's advice, she said, "There is nothing serious. I just feel like my heart has gotten colder lately." We began to talk. Eleanor shared stories about her younger years, the time when she and her husband were young. Poor, but full of laughter. Then he passed away from a stroke just as she turned 65. Since then, almost no one had hugged her tightly. No one had called her by the sweet name they once used. She became a grandmother, a mother, a kind neighbor, but she no longer felt like a woman in the fullest sense of the word. In a very quiet moment, she softly said, "I miss being held, just being held. I do not need much, but I have forgotten that feeling for too long." I said nothing, I just listened, because I understood that the absence of intimacy does not just affect the body, it quietly wears down the soul. There is something I always tell my patients, especially those over 60, emotions never retire. Our hearts do not age with silver hair or weak legs. They keep beating to the rhythm of hope, the longing to be close, to be loved, to be remembered as a complete person. And for that reason, it is never too late to begin again. A new beginning does not have to be something grand. You do not have to return to the passion of youth. You do not need someone special to feel intimacy. Some people start with themselves, by placing a hand over their chest, taking a deep breath and saying, "I deserve love, I am still alive, I am still whole." Closeness can begin with a small action, sending a message to an old friend, calling someone you have not spoken to in a long time, holding your partner's hand during a walk around the house each evening, or simply smiling at yourself in the mirror in the morning. For couples who have grown distant over time, intimacy can begin again with an honest sentence. "I miss how we used to be. Can we get a little closer again?" That simple sentence carries the power of courage. The courage to admit you still need each other. The courage to break the wall of silence that has stood for too long. I once witnessed a couple in their 70s who had lived almost like strangers for many years due to a misunderstanding in the past. Then, after the wife fell ill, the husband began caring for her attentively. One day, while feeding her porridge, he held her hand for a long time. He said nothing, just held it. And from that moment, they began to reconnect with their eyes, with a gentle touch on the hair, with the little things they should never have forgotten. I also knew a woman who had lived alone since her early 50s. When she turned 70, she began to learn meditation, dancing, and joined a community singing group. There, she made friends with a widowed man. They did not fall in love like a fairy tale, but they called each other every evening, asking what the other had eaten, if they had slept well. They told each other that thanks to one another, they felt less lonely and still valuable. Sometimes, people do not need someone to love in the usual sense. They just need someone to share with, to know that they still matter to someone in this world. And that very realization is the first step to bringing life back, not just in the breath, but in the heart. For Eleanor, I referred her to a gentle yoga class for seniors. She started attending twice a week. A few months later, I received a handwritten card with careful penmanship. "Doctor, I have remembered what it feels like to be a woman, not through the body, but through a look. Someone called me Miss Eleanor and invited me for tea. I thought I had forgotten what it feels like to be invited." You see, even a simple invitation can light up a part of the soul that had long been asleep. And as long as we are still breathing, there is still hope to begin again. If you have followed along this far, it says one very clear thing: you still love life deeply. While many choose silence, choose to live with invisible voids that no one sees, you have chosen to listen, to learn, and to better understand your own body and emotions. What we have just shared are not temporary tips. They are quiet and profound truths about human health in later life. When the brain begins to react to loneliness, when the body becomes weary from the lack of intimate contact, when once beautiful relationships turn into quiet distance, and when even our life expectancy may be shortened simply because of the absence of a hug, a touch, or a loving gaze. But as I said from the beginning, this is not a warning meant to frighten you. It is a gentle reminder to give you hope, because all that we thought was lost is still there. We only need one small step to reach out again. A glance, a kind question, the courage to say, "I still want to be loved, I still need emotions, I am still myself," even at 60, 70, or 80 years old. None of us is ever too old to begin again. No one is ever past their time to be touched with kindness, to be loved with gentleness, and no one deserves to spend their final years in loneliness and silence. Start with the smallest act. Call someone you once grew distant from. Hold your partner's hand while watching television. Let your heart breathe again, fully and completely. If you found today's message meaningful, please do not hesitate to leave a comment below. It could be a heartfelt note, a story, or simply the words, "I am ready." Let this community heal together. Let us remind one another that we still deserve love, right now, not only in memory. I wish you good health, peace of mind, and a deep connection with your own heart. See you again in the next sharing.